Hey everyone, welcome back to RetroBreak and welcome to another Game Boy Homebrew Games episode. In this episode, we're taking a look at these 7 games here. The first one is Escape 2042 by Orionsoft, and this is a really cool action/espionage stealth kind of game. So you play as the main character here, escaping a high security prison, and the game consists of you doing platforming challenges and then getting to computers and having to do button combinations in order to deactivate some traps and then try and progress further to collect keys, to unlock doors, to get further and further into the escape sequence. It's a really cool game. There are some things that really frustrated me though that I would like to see improved if the developer ever does go back and make like a director's cut or a sequel or something. For one thing, the hitboxes were way too big for what you actually see on the screen, so a lot of the time I was just getting hit by the cameras. But apart from that, I don't really have many complaints about this game at all. It's really fast, I loved the graphics, I loved the animations, and it's a really cool and unique concept. And apparently there's also a Game Boy Advance version in the works too. So if you think this looks interesting, then check out the developer over on Twitter or on their website to keep up to date to find out when the Game Boy Advance release is coming. The next one is another game by Orionsoft, this time for the Game Boy Advance. This is called Alice Sisters, and apparently this one was originally a Mega Drive game that was then ported to the Game Boy Advance. And I didn't like this one anywhere near as much as I liked the last game. This one had some very odd design decisions. So on the surface, it seemed like a kind of basic 2D platformer with sort of hop and bop mechanics where you can just jump on enemies or shoot this little bubble at them. But then as the levels in the game progressed, it turned more into a sort of platforming puzzle game where you have to go around collecting different keys and triggering different switches in order to open doors, and it was very convoluted. And there was a weird checkpoint system where I would get locked behind the bit where I actually needed to be. So then I would spend like 10 minutes trying to get back to that point, and I was getting quite frustrated. If you want to see my thoughts on both of these games, I actually streamed them on the weekend. So I'll put a link down in the description below if you want to see me actually trying to play through these games. And I also gave some feedback to the developers as well. So if you're interested in more of a deep dive into what these games have to offer, then definitely check that out and definitely follow me over on Twitch or here on YouTube on my gameplay channel to catch me live whenever I'm doing homebrew games in the future, because I do plan on actually playing them all live to get footage and to gather my opinions about the games to show off in these videos. So this was Alice Sisters, a kind of strange 2D platforming puzzle game that I wasn't really a huge fan of, but still congratulations on the release, and the graphics and music are really nice, so I definitely have to give it points for those. Next up is an RPG called Neko Can Dream, and I think I brought this one up before, but since then I've actually gone back and fully completed the game, so here's my updated opinions about this one. I thought it was a great game with a really engrossing story. Well, in fact there was sort of 3 different stories that you play throughout this journey. You basically play as this cat character and you go into people's dreams and then you solve their sort of dilemmas, and then you come out again and you go into the next area, and some of the characters sort of interconnected through these dreams, and then there's a big twist ending. It's really cute. I really enjoyed the story. Some of the puzzles and the environments were a little bit hard to find my way around sometimes, but I managed to get there in the end. The graphics were amazing. I loved the graphics were amazing. I just loved the aesthetic of this game as well. And the music was really good too. So if you enjoy story-based RPGs and you want something a little bit different, then definitely check out Neko Can Dream. It was made in Game Boy Studio and it is definitely one of the most polished games that I've played in that sort of style. So really recommend this one. Next up is another Game Boy release by Limited Run. This one is Repugnant Bounty, and I have covered this one in the past. In fact, I actually played this entire game last year on my Twitch channel, so I'm really glad now to actually own a physical version of the game, and it's an amazing Metroidvania-style 2D adventure game. It's a little bit more on the simple side than a Metroid game. It's actually fairly easy to find your way all the way through the game, so it kind of mimics an open world whilst also still being really accessible and kind of linear in places as well, which I personally really enjoyed. So if you like Metroid 2 and you want something more streamlined and a more modern take on that style of game for the Game Boy Color, then I really can't recommend Repugnant Bounty highly enough. And the developer's actually working now on a top-down Zelda-style action game as well, so keep an eye out for news on that one too. I've had the chance to play an early build of the game and it looks like it's shaping up to be a really great top-down adventure. So if it's anywhere near the quality of this game when it's done, then definitely check that one out as well. And definitely follow the developer over on Twitter for updates because they are really talented and I can't wait to see what they come up with next. Next is Melon Journey, another game released by Limited Run, and I really didn't enjoy this one at all. I was hoping for a really good story-driven game, just like Neko Can Dream. They're both made in GB Studio, they both had similar sort of vibes going for them, but man, Melon Journey really let me down. There was literally nothing happening in this game. I played it for about an hour on stream, and apart from the intro cutscene, there was no progress in the plot whatsoever. It was just meeting random characters for no reason and just giving them random items and then going to give other characters other random items. And I quickly got bored of this. Maybe if you enjoy just really basic sort of... I wouldn't even call it narrative, just really basic walking around and finding new NPCs to talk to. Maybe you'd enjoy this, but I really couldn't get into it, and the people watching on the stream as well just thought it was a little bit strange, so really not what I was expecting at all. Maybe the original game or the sequel that's on Steam now has more of a story, but maybe there's more once you get further into this, but I really couldn't get past the fact that nothing was happening. It didn't seem like I was making any progress despite going to new locations, so if you just enjoy those sort of cozy games, I think they're called, where you just walk around and meet people, then maybe this is for you, but I really couldn't get on with this one, unfortunately. Next up is a game called Empire of Dreams, which is another GB Studio game. This one's a point-and-click adventure with a very strange premise, and I couldn't really figure out what I was supposed to be doing the entire time, although I did finish this one. It's based on French surrealist paintings, and it was kind of all over the place. I didn't really understand the meaning behind anything. I think there is some sort of deeper meaning hidden away, but maybe a Game Boy game isn't the best way to express that in this sort of format. But even so, for a point-and-click game, it was very simple. You basically just pick up an item, and then you can interact with things in different screens and see whether you can actually do anything with them or not, and you just keep doing that until you get to the end of the game. There wasn't really much thought behind what I was doing. Apparently, it's randomly generated as well, so every time you start the game again, you get a random set of items to find, and then you go to these random locations, and there's sort of random surrealist images on the screen, and you can do random things, and eventually you find all the items, and then you get to the end. The most interesting thing about this, though, was that the developer actually sent me these books over as well, which were actually sort of art books where he's taken some of his Game Boy camera photos and actually printed them out into these mini little art books here. So that was really cool to see, and if you do want to check his website out, I'll put it down in the description below, because these are really cool and you can actually buy them on there as well as the game itself. So definitely check them out. These are called 2-Bit Pictures, and this is called The Empire of Dreams. And the final game, and definitely the best one of the bunch this time, this is From Below Pocket. And this is a really cool, unique take on the Tetris formula. So basically it plays like classic Tetris, but as well as it just being Tetris, you also have to worry about the Kraken here, who is pushing his tentacles up from the bottom of the screen and actually pushing your blocks higher. There's a few different game modes where the tentacle appears in sort of different timings, either every time you land a block or after every 10 seconds, and it just gets progressively harder and harder as Tetris does. It's kind of a weird mix of modern Tetris and classic Tetris. I was a little bit disappointed that although it features the hard drop, it doesn't feature things such as the hold blocks, and it doesn't actually feature shadow pieces as well. Although the developer did contact me after and said that he worked on a patch for the game where you can now see shadow pieces at the bottom of the grid, which would have made it a lot easier because I was playing on this giant monitor in front of me and I was trying to do the hard drop and I just could not line up where the pieces were falling. But apart from that, one tiny little complaint: this is a fantastic port of Tetris, and it's a really interesting take on the game as well. I love the new unique twist on the formula, so I highly recommend checking out From Below. There's a Pocket version here, and there's also a NES version as well, so I'll put a link down in the description below to the itch.io page so you can check both of them out. It's just really cool, and Broke Studio did a fantastic job with this, and I can't wait to see what they make next. So there we go, that was 7 more Homebrew games for the Game Boy. I hope you enjoyed this. If you want to see more Homebrew games, then click the video up here to watch the previous video in the series. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, consider checking out Patreon to support me going forwards, and I'll see you all again very soon. Goodbye.